right, episode 23 of our podcast.
Wow. God.
This is the Michael Jordan episode, number 23. Well, we are here in Panama. It is our 48th country. We are getting ready to ship to Colombia in a little over 2 weeks, roughly.
Yeah.
First time shipping for a couple of years now. We shipped back just about 2 years ago from Europe. And since then, we've gone through all of Central America. And we are now at the town of El Valle de Anton, which is about an hour and a half west of Panama City. So Panama City is where we need to be to start prepping all the stuff. We're staying at kind of a restaurant slash hotel. They have a yard. We can park our van over there.
The real reason we're here is because it's higher in elevation and it's so hot in Central America. We're just doing anything we can to avoid the heat.
Yeah, so we've been kind of going from one high elevation place to another. This one's not quite as high. This is 2,000 feet compared to where we were before. Last week we were in Boquete, which is all the way near the border of Costa Rica. It's about an hour north of the main highway. So we're escaping the heat. We're trying to burn some time before we have to go down in elevation to do all the stuff.
And it's Semana Santa, so it's like the busiest weekend of the entire year, I think. And so we're just absorbing and hanging out and all the activities they have in town.
We were actually very concerned. There's some side-by-sides driving by right now, blasting music. Welcome to the podcast.
Maybe we need to re-record this.
No, it's all right. This is real life, bro.
Okay.
Here in El Valle de Anton, we're here for a couple more days, but we wanted to bring you guys another episode of our podcast. Our last one was all about cats, traveling with cats. So this one is an interview. This is an interview that we recorded when we were still in Costa Rica a few weeks ago. We talked to Alexandria from She Roams Wild. She's somebody who is only a few years out of college and started traveling and sharing her story on YouTube. And we're very intrigued. She travels with a dog. She has been in 3 different campers, a self-built
Van?
transit.
I think so.
I want to say it's a Ford Transit van. And then she was in a school bus, like a shorty school bus for a little bit. And then now she is in a Bigfoot fiberglass truck camper in the back of a Toyota Tundra. So very interesting story, very cool story. It was great to talk to her. We talked to her when she was in Baja. She had just arrived in the Los Barriles area of southern Baja. We chatted with her a lot about our time in Baja, and we gave her some places to go, things to see. But since then, she has actually left Baja early. We were wondering, if she was going to stay for a while. At the time, she seemed like she was going to keep traveling, but I think, she just didn't feel it after her first few weeks there, especially when she got down to the southern part. I think maybe there were a lot of people.
It was getting hotter, I think.
It was getting warm. Yeah, she was traveling alone, so there's a lot of considerations to kind of think about when you're especially a solo female traveler. So we talked to her a little bit about that. So we want to share this interview with you guys. It was a couple hours long. So for those of you that follow her on YouTube, she shares, I think, a video a week. And you might find this kind of behind the scenes of her story interesting. So we'll just get right into it. Hope you guys enjoy.
Well, I am currently, I think it's Punta Pescado, just north of Los Barriles.
Did you drive down that dirt road?
So I unfortunately had to get to Los Barriles from La Ventana a little bit faster, so now I'm working my way north on it instead of going southbound. Yeah.
Are you going further south from there? I thought you were going to the East Cape, aren't you?
I will be, yeah. I still wanted to see if I could hit this section so it doesn't make sense in terms of fuel economy, but I still am enjoying the coastline.
I will say
it's a little bit of a rugged road.
It's worth driving if you were going there anyways. I don't know if you want to double back just to do it.
Okay.
Because there's not a lot of stuff that you can you can't really pull over and spend a night anywhere because it's pretty narrow. And it's just a good alternative for somebody who wants to be a little adventurous to go that way. I don't think you necessarily want to do. It's not like I wouldn't say it's a must see, but a lot of people we know are always looking for something different. So we're like, okay, this is something different. You can try it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this beach, a lot of folks that I know are still further south down on the East Cape or Cerritos and
Yeah.
even in Los Barriles. And I had stopped at a couple points because it was getting late in the day. I was like, maybe I'll just make the jump tomorrow. But I mean, this beach has been spectacular. Jumping rays and dolphins, great
yeah.
snorkeling, and no one around. So I'm really
Yeah.
enjoying the solitude of this like southernmost portion at least. So we'll see.
Yeah, we pulled over on our way to Los Barriles and just had to take pictures of jumping rays.
Yeah,
and
there
I
were
think
so
that's
many.
probably where they are the most active, it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a huge show this morning, probably 20 or so, just going across the
cool.
horizon close to sunrise, and it was awesome.
Oh man. You should fly the drone next time you see it.
I
if
know,
you-
I've been a little hesitant about that. I've heard and read a bit that you're not supposed to down here without your license, and not that
Well,
I'm
yeah.
always a rule follower. I know that everyone else is doing it, but yeah, I haven't busted it out yet.
Depends on the drone you have, and depends on like, what rule you abide by. Like we've talked to some people who like contacted government officials in Mexico about the rules, and somebody did say that a sub 250-gram drone is fair game. So
Oh, well, that's what I have. So, okay,
Yeah.
maybe I'll have to.
so you might be
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
then
have
then there's
the
other
option.
people who are like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to be one of those gringos that break the rules. Like, okay, well,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think if it's going to be for like a big commercial shoot, that's probably right one end of the spectrum. But if it's just to get a better look at the rays, maybe I'll bend the rules.
the rule they instituted is pretty draconian. It's like basically no non-Mexican nationals can fly at all,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is, I mean, every time I see somebody fly, I'm like, well, technically that's not legal, but it's kind of one of those things where they have the rule in place and they'll enforce it. If they see a problem, they want to be able to enforce it, but it's pretty lax. But even if nothing else, like when you see like 20 rays out there like jumping, that means there's like hundreds, if not thousands, that you can see just below the surface.
I have a friend who, in this area or maybe a little further south last week, brought her drone out and was shooting, and she ended up actually
Yeah.
going out and swimming, and then had her friend man the drone, and it was such an
Wow.
epic shot.
Yeah.
This wind is crazy today, of course, too.
Oh, I mean, you're in like kiteboarding zone right there.
Yeah.
You know, it's been crazy though, since getting in. I was in La Ventana probably 5 or 6 days ago. We've had 2 to 3 mile an hour winds every day. It has been
Yeah.
hot and super, super low winds. So it's a nice breeze. It's a nice change in temperature, but it's been really pleasant actually as a kite surfer.
I'm sure the people who are there are pissed.
Probably.
Like, what the hell is this?
No, I'm sure. Maybe I'll take a lesson or something if they pick up, but I'm more of a traditional surfer, so.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't know if all that gear is for me. And it's a lot of gear. And it
I
seems
already
like,
have enough. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When you're so tired from being out in the water all day, and then you have to like break all that stuff down, pack it all away, clean it up.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just not into it. I think it's a good transition from like wakeboarding, water skiing maybe, because people that love that kind of water sports like really into the constant action, whereas like surfing is more like paddling out, sitting on your board, waiting for waves is just as much of surfing, if not, I mean, for most of us it's the majority of surfing.
Yeah, my dad and I used to joke, 'cause I grew up in Santa Cruz, which is a big surfing area off of the northern central coast of California, and my dad and I joked that we don't surf, we paddle. That's the sport. The surfing is like 2% of the
Right,
time,
right.
but most
Oh.
of it's sitting waiting and getting pounded by the waves on the way out.
I mean, 2% is a lot. I mean,
Probably
You must be
generous.
good.
that means you're out there for an hour and like surfing for what is that in an hour, like a minute and a half or something. I mean, that's
Fair.
but
Yeah.
that's cool. So
Yeah,
you grew up in
it
Santa
feels
Cruz.
fun. I did, yeah, Santa Cruz Mountains, so not in town, but just right up the hill. It's like a 20-minute
Okay,
drive down to the beach. Yeah.
That's a
cool.
pretty area.
Yeah, like Scotts Valley area.
Yeah, right around there actually, off of
Cool.
Summit, if you know the area at all. The ridge line that comes down where the Loma Prieta earthquake happened, some people would know that
Yeah,
as well.
right.
That's where I grew up, long after the earthquake, thankfully, but really, really
Yeah, the
beautiful area.
earthquake was like early 90s, right?
89, yeah.
89. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had just moved to California in 88. 80,
Oh, well.
88, 89? No.
Yeah.
87?
I don't know if you did.
87, I think maybe. Yeah, and I remember that. I remember that really well. Like, because my uncle was living in San Jose.
Okay. Yeah.
My brother actually
Crazy.
lives in Los Gatos now, so he's not far from where you're from.
I went to
So we
Los
were
Gatos High
actually
School.
in.
Small
Oh,
world.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you drive all the way over the 17 every time, every day?
That's where I learned to drive. Yep.
Wow. What they call that
Yeah.
like Blood Alley or something, right?
Yeah, and I think especially now there's with all the commuters from the Bay Area, it's something crazy like 73 or 74,000 people every day are traveling across. So now it's
Mm-hmm.
not only is everyone in a hurry, but it's pretty packed too. So
Wow.
grateful to have had
Yeah,
a bit of my experience before it got really bad.
Yeah.
that's crazy. When we first got our van in 2018, one of our first trips was just driving up north. And we drove from Santa Cruz to San Jose to go visit my brother on the 17th. And our power steering went out on the 17th. Like, for some reason,
Brand new van.
this is
No
brand new. I mean,
cars.
we had like hundreds of miles on the odometer. And, you're driving on those windy mountain roads, and then you have to like lean your whole body into the steering wheel to make a turn, or we're just going to careen off the side. But yeah, that was a recall, turns out, that they never told us about.
Yeah. That only happened
Yeah,
once.
that's
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
between, I guess, power steering and brakes are probably the two things you don't want to have go out on that road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I would prefer power steering go out than brakes, because people drove without power steering for decades, right?
You're like, ugh.
But nobody drove without brakes very long.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Well, how long ago was that then? You guys have been on the road for 16 years. Is that what I saw the other day?
Yeah, so that was 2018,
Yeah.
right? Because we got the van in early 2018. So that was just before we went to Europe. But yeah, so before that, we were in a couple other campers, and we did mostly the U.S. But 2016, we went international. So one of the things that we talk about is like we spend so much time traveling the U.S. and we used to have so many friends that are on the road traveling the U.S. like you are now. But all of those people have stopped traveling. So when we came back from Europe in 2022, it's like we didn't know anybody. We had to make all new friends.
We're like the new kids on the block.
And everyone's like, who are
School.
these people? Like, because then like when we left, we were 5 years younger, 6 years younger. And then we came back and we don't feel like we're 5 years older. But then everybody's like 15, 20 years younger than we are now. So we dropped into like a whole different world, especially with COVID and all the different rules that are in place and all that stuff, which was wild.
Yeah,
So
a lot more people on the road too, I would imagine, than pre-pandemic.
for sure, a lot
Yeah.
more people on the road. I mean, even before the pandemic, it felt like, this lifestyle was getting more and more popular. There wasn't a stigma anymore, like when we started, and especially with, people with families. But it does seem like it became a lot more accessible to like younger people, just the way that the lifestyle, like the way that you can make money, the way that you can communicate with your friends and family still, like so much easier than it used to be. So I feel, the accessibility has made a big impact on how many people are out there.
Totally. Yeah, and I
Do
mean
you
now
see a
too, the
lot of
advent of
people in
Starlink.
Baja still right now?
Yeah, definitely a lot of people down here. I've noticed more and more heading north. I think I got here and have been traveling a bit slower than a lot of the folks who came before. And so at this point, people are starting to either slowly make their way back north, or they're like, okay, it's time to get back to the
Yeah.
States. So it's really been
Yeah.
clearing out. When I was coming south, most people I passed were going back past me. But still,
Yeah.
I think I've done an alright job at staying in the less populated areas. Now heading forward, going to, Cabo Pulmo and Cabo, Todos Santos, all of those areas, I'm sure it's still going to be pretty busy. But I don't think...
Yeah, Cabo
but maybe
Pomo
one
can
night-
be busy, but the rest of the
Yeah.
East Cape is so big and dispersed.
Yeah.
You'll be able
So
to
many
find
spots.
you'll be able to find places all by yourself, even at the peak of the season.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And all of your recommendations have been so fun to watch and listen to. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you got it. We felt like, this information was probably more useful like 4 months ago.
We're always a little late.
That's okay. That's okay. I think
But I
too,
do
it's-
think right now is the best time to be down there.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I know you have the cats and kids, obviously, so temperature and climate definitely impact you as well. But my dog, with her long hair, it's been a struggle this week. It's been 84 to 87. We hit 94 going over the mountains the other day.
Wow.
And without AC in the camper, just fans and wind, we've been really working to stay cool. So I think that
Yeah.
might cut the trip a little short if it continues to get hot this early, just because I want to make sure she's still comfy. But I mean, the water's been
Yeah.
lovely.
When you get back to the Pacific side, it's going to be a little bit better because there'll be a stronger breeze. Well, I mean, La Ventana and Los Barilas can get really breezy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it is going to get warmer. I would say by like mid-March, early April, it's going to get close to unbearable. This is the last good stretch,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, and that was always my plan, was to get down here after the new year. I got to spend some time with family, which was great for the holidays, and then came down just pretty early January. And so my turnaround time was, well, 2 or 3 months, depends on the weather, but probably that mid to end March, I'll be heading back north, trying to escape the brunt of the heat, because that's what I had heard.
Cool. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff ahead of you still. So you haven't gone to the west side of Baja. So you're going clockwise, right?
Yeah, clockwise.
Cool.
Came through and stayed on 1 the whole way, or I guess 5 the whole way down until we met 1, and then I've split off a couple times back east, just because everyone came down for a big event, and so I was trying to stay north and a little bit more secluded and quiet as long as
Oh,
I could.
man.
That's a
and
good
then-
idea.
It's a good plan.
Yeah.
We were
Now
there
that they
last
locked down.
winter. Last winter during that big van event too, and we were in Cabo, and it was like, we don't want to be in Cabo, but we'd rather be in Cabo than there.
For sure.
It's a lot of
Yeah, there were, I
people.
think, hundreds of thousands of people down here and just as
I'm
many
sure.
rigs. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, looked like a great time, just not quite our speed. So I was happy
No,
to be on
and
a
I-
on the beach.
And I've been fairly vocal in public about how that event was organized and where it's organized and all the reasons why it shouldn't be organized at that place in that manner. But I'm just one person. There's not a lot that I can do.
Yeah, well, you're not alone in it, I guess. I'll say that.
Yeah.
You're definitely not alone. There's a good number of us who feel similarly and chose not to go this year. And for everyone who did, glad that they had a good time. And I hope that they were able to, respect the area and clean up and do everything that they should be doing to respect it.
Have you been down to Baja before? Is this your first time?
It's my first time. Yeah, my first time. So really taking it all in.
Not even like on a family vacation to like a resort or anything?
Okay, so I guess we spent 3 days in Cabo del San Jose a couple years ago, but
Yeah, okay.
I mean, we stayed at the resort. We flew in
Right.
and flew out. Didn't do
Yeah.
actually really much international travel with my family growing up, so I got my passport for that trip, and I think I
Oh,
was
wow.
17 or 18. So
Okay.
yeah, didn't
Fun.
grow up doing a lot of that, but we did a lot of camping, so still got that travel and a lot of the outdoors with my family, which was great.
Yeah, what's that like? So, tell us a little bit about like how you grew up. You said you grew up in Northern California, and were you Were you always from the coast? Like, was your family from there? Like, how far back of a Californian does your family go?
Yeah, so I guess my great great grandparents were the first generation in California. They all
Oh
immigrated
wow.
from, yeah, so they all immigrated from Italy and some from France and Germany. And then on my dad's side, my noni was first generation here. And so she actually, her mom is from Mexico, and then her dad was Swedish. And so, yeah, on that
Hmm.
side, I guess I'm what, third generation. So, since people have come to the States, everyone settled in California on both sides of my family and pretty much stayed in that Santa Clara area, San Jose area, right in the Bay
Hmm.
Area. We're all agriculture and orchard workers and owners growing up. So, yeah, that was, I mean, it's cool to have that piece of California history in my family, and I feel like it's always going to be home. But yeah, just had this desire to see as much as I could. And when I turned 18, I went, with my family to San Jose del Cabo. And I had done one trip in an RV up to Vancouver and Whistler area. So that was my
That's
only
cool.
other exposure. Yeah, really beautiful. But again, RV, we stayed in a campground, went mountain biking, and that was really our speed growing up was a tent. Then we graduated to the RV and a lot of just trips out of California. So
Did your
really
parents
just
own the RV, or was it like a rental?
yeah, they actually ended up buying an RV, I think in probably 2002 or
Oh
2003,
wow. Okay.
when my
Cool.
brother was 3. Yeah.
Are they still
Yeah.
doing that? Do they still take trips?
So sold that RV a little while ago, and it's actually
Okay.
really, I'm excited for them. In November, they sold their house in California, and they're now on the road full time as well, which is cool.
Oh
Wow.
wow. So
Yeah.
you don't have a place to build another rig. What are you gonna do?
No, I really don't, and that's a great question. It's something I've been grappling with. So I don't know if you have any recommendations.
I mean, the truck and Bigfoot looks like it should last. I mean, right?
It's a great combo. I will say, being down here, this has really been the proving grounds, I'll say, in terms of going
Yeah.
more off the beaten track. And this camper is home. I absolutely love it. It's so cozy. There's so much space for, just myself. But I do get a little bit nervous because the fiberglass is amazing for what it's made for, but it's not
Right.
really made to flex and go off road a whole lot. So the
Yeah.
truck is definitely more capable, and yeah, it's giving me some ideas for the future.
And when they age a bit, the fiberglass can get a little brittle. But seems like you now you got some fiberglass repair experience.
Yeah, definitely. I won't say it's the most beautiful work, but I mean, it's held, it's watertight, and it's
Yeah,
been doing
right.
a lot.
That's all that matters, right?
Yeah.
As long as it works.
Yeah, and we really enjoyed watching your build videos. You started off with a van, and then you switched to a bus, and now you're in the truck camper currently.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
And which one was the hardest to build out, you think?
So I guess for different reasons, the van and the camper, the bus was pretty straightforward, and I did that really fast, honestly, 8 weeks or so it took me to build the bus, which for me at least is rapid pace. The van was hard because it was my first build, and I did not know what I was doing. This was still a little bit before I would say the bulk of the DIY how to build your rig videos went up on YouTube, and so I pretty much just had one or two people that I could watch their video and then try to replicate it. And so I learned a lot in that build. I learned a lot about, not only how to use tools and do things from both YouTube and my dad, who gratefully provided the tools, but also just, you make a lot of mistakes on your first one. So that was difficult for those reasons. But I think restoring this camper was a whole nother set of challenges, working around things that already existed and trying to figure out what needed repairing versus replacing. But again, learned a lot. And if I ever do another build, I feel like I'll go into it, now with 3 builds behind me and knowing even more. So I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, so what kind of RV are your parents in? And how come they didn't do a home built?
Yeah. So my parents are actually in a travel trailer now, which is a
Okay.
little different. I guess maybe more akin to when y'all were in your Airstream. So
Yeah.
pulling it behind. Yeah, and they really just wanted more space. They have a really large chocolate lab. He's like over 100 pounds with a whole lot of energy. And the two of them,
Wow,
they
that's
just
a big
wanted a little
chocolate
more
lab.
space. Yeah, he's huge, really big boy. So yeah, they wanted a little bit more space, and I think they love that they can also detach, and being able to get on the
Yeah.
road faster for them was a
I
priority.
mean, that's probably the biggest benefit. I mean, you know by now, once you set up camp,
Yeah.
like,
You don't want to
you
leave.
know, is it worth it to pack it all up just to go get a loaf of bread? Or should I just eat a keto diet for the next 3 days? Go catch some
Yeah.
fish.
Yeah.
Especially in Baja, it's really gratefully, I'm actually really enjoying it. Shifted my perspective around food and access to things because not only is
Hmm.
it different being in Baja versus, California or Arizona, but also it's like once I get to camp, like right now to get out, I'm gonna have to air down my tires, move my traction boards. It's probably gonna take, time in addition to breaking camp down. And then when you get to
Yeah.
town, what even is there? So getting creative with my food and really just being satisfied with what I have is what I have has been a really eye-opening experience
I
for
mean,
me.
sometimes you have to eat a couple meals straight out of a can, for you to appreciate the fresh stuff in life.
Yeah. What can I make with corn and
There's some
cheese?
there's some sliced jalapenos. What can I do with
Yep.
that? Maybe make a
Yeah.
drink from it.
Yeah. You're describing the contents of my fridge right now.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, oh, go ahead.
the thing about having a travel trailer for your parents is it's the perfect setup for traveling in the U.S. and that we were able to do it for so long. But I'd never go back to towing something again. Did you ever consider towing anything? I mean, it's for one person traveling alone, male or female. It's a lot of effort.
Totally. Yeah, I did briefly consider it coming into this third rig just because I had seen a few videos of folks in like the Scamp trailers, so much smaller
Yeah,
still,
we
fiberglass.
used to
And
have a
I was
casita.
really, yeah, and I was really looking for reliability. Coming from my bus that just broke down constantly on me,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted something
Mm-hmm.
reliable. And so I got the Toyota Tundra, an older 2006, and that was really the keystone for me, the keystone piece. And then from there it was, okay, well, maybe I put one of those little camper shells on it so I can have that portability and gear storage, and then I can
Yeah.
drop a trailer. But I think, like you said, just not only the places that I want to go then would be more limited towing something, but also, how often is it really that I'm going to want to drop a trailer and drive into town? And is it worth then having this much larger and I guess more difficult to maneuver rig, especially if I'm going through towns and whatnot? And this just seemed
Yeah.
more contained, more contained.
Yeah, and it's always like, when you come across an intersection, like, will I be able to reverse the entirety of this road if I had to while towing a trailer? It's different when you have somebody that can go out there and like scout for you, but being by yourself, that's another challenge. So that totally makes sense, and I think you'll find out, especially after being in Baja, like international travel with your setup,
Yeah.
it's the ideal way to go. And you have a pretty well insulated setup for winter, right?
I do, yeah. The coldest that we've stayed in, it was actually pre-heater as well and pre-renovation, but we were up in Stanley, Idaho, I guess now 2 winters ago in this rig, and it was
Hmm.
right after I'd bought it, and it got down to 7 degrees outside,
Oh,
which for
wow.
us, especially in a rig that, had some
Mm-hmm.
water issues and had some leaks going on that I didn't fully understand yet. Moisture was an issue, but the cold, I mean, I sleep with a sleeping bag even now. I have a dog, it's dirty. I love being able to just shake it out.
Yeah.
And we were great. She just had her little rumple blanket that I wrapped her up in, and I had on a jacket, went to bed, and it was great. Now that I have the heater as well, I think we've stayed, 9 or 10 degrees is the coldest we've done this time around since the rebuild. And I won't say that we're, toasty. It's not 75 in
And you have one
here,
of
but
those like
it's lovely.
propane like boat heaters. Is that what you use?
Yeah, I do. I really like it because it actually circulates most of the moisture out, which is the biggest complaint with propane is that it's that wet heat.
Yeah.
But I found it to be exceptional and I don't have any condensation issues and it's really just nice to have that little glow of the fire too. Feels very homey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it looks really cool too, actually. Some people think it's ugly, but I think it looks really neat.
It's an accent piece,
And
right?
especially being like in a fiberglass camper, it's got such like a marine boat feel,
Yeah, it does.
you know?
Totally. Yeah, I appreciate you understanding the vibe I was going for.
I got you. So you said you had a younger brother?
Yeah,
Do you have
I
other
do.
siblings or just the two of you?
Just the two of us. Yeah, my younger brother, I guess he's what, 24 now. That's crazy. And he's out in Grand Junction, Colorado. He went to school in Durango and then decided he
Cool.
loved it enough. So him and his partner are there and not mobile, but his job is a couple weeks on, a couple weeks off. So they're actually also in a
Wow,
trailer
nice.
now and they
Is he
have
like
the
a
Oh,
ability to
wow.
go
firefighter or
camping.
something?
The whole
What's
family
that?
is
Yeah. Is he like a
Yeah.
firefighter or something? Or
No, he actually works as an engineer out in the mineral deposits out in
oh,
Colorado. So
Oh,
so he's
cool.
like
he
in
has
the
to
mine,
go,
works for a mining company.
yeah, pretty much. He's one of their project
Okay,
engineers there. Yeah.
cool. I
Yeah,
don't know if
yeah,
you
so they're all
have,
on
but
their
there's
own.
a lot of Canadians in Baja and Mexico that work in the mining business.
Yeah, we seem to meet a
We
lot.
seem to meet every Canadian that we come across is like, oh, I'm in mining. I'm a mining engineer. I work in a mine. I retire from a mine. Like everybody's working in the mine.
Totally. Yeah, I think the oil, gas, and mineral industry up there is booming, especially in, Alberta
Yeah,
and provinces in the center of the country. But met a
yeah.
lot of folks from
Saskatchewan, I
BC.
think.
Yeah,
A
Saskatchewan
lot of
as
folks in
well.
BC.
A lot of Quebecians as well. A lot of French down here, which I wasn't really expecting.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've met a couple, and there was an older couple that we met on the beaches of Cabo, like on the east end of Cabo, between San Jose del Cabo and
Yeah.
Cabo San Lucas. Such an interesting, super cool older guy. He was like heavy machinery operator, but it's like you listen to this guy talk. He's like if like an American redneck spoke French. It's so awesome.
Yeah, my
But we
mom
didn't
will
see
appreciate
that
hearing
many
that.
Quebecois. I think maybe like two or three
Yeah.
couple. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the
Oh
one that
wow.
stuck out the most.
Dang. Yeah, no, when I got to San Ignacio, I think I ran into two or three groups, and each group had at least a dozen folks in it. A lot of them
Wow.
on motorcycles too, which was an interesting way of travel all the way down. And asked, are
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
Yeah.
taking your motorcycle off the rig? But they had driven all the way from Quebec, so I'll give it to them. That's
Wow.
pretty
Well,
intense.
because I think,
Yeah.
people from the eastern side of Canada used to go to Florida, and now the exchange rate so bad for them to be in the U.S. I think a lot more are opting to go all the way to Mexico instead, just to kind of, have a cheaper winter than being stuck up
Or a
there.
new experience.
Or a new experience, but cheaper is always nice.
Yeah, gotta travel with the economy. I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's even down in Baja now. It doesn't seem like as cheap as it used to be, but for us it was different because we came back from Europe thinking the U.S. was still priced in the 2018s, but
Yeah.
you know,
Oh,
it was culture shock.
Totally. Yeah, I think the thing that has surprised me the most with cost, groceries, depending on where I've been, have been similar, maybe slightly less money, but the gas here, and I had heard just
Yeah, the
briefly, oh,
gas
it's
is more.
California prices, but I don't think I've ever paid $130 for a 26-gallon tank of gas in California. It's been pretty brutal.
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, anywhere outside of the U.S., it's pretty brutal. We've not really been anywhere outside of the U.S. where we feel like, that's reasonable. Like the most we paid, I want to say, was close to $9 a gallon, and this is
Yeah.
at the beginning of the no, at the
Middle.
end, in the middle of the pandemic, just before we came back. It was in France. I was trying to get gas for the van, and as I was swiping my card or inserting my card, the price changed, went up, and like in the moment. So
Why isn't this working?
I took my thing out. I was like, I don't know if I got charged the lower price or the higher price, but I guess it doesn't matter. It's like $9 or $9.10, but it's
Totally.
insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it makes people realize like how good we have it in the U.S. when it comes to fuel prices. Even California prices is not it doesn't compare to how much other people have to pay. And then you look at these people that live in these countries that don't make a lot of money. How can they afford? How can they afford to get gas? There's a bit of a two-tier economy in foreign countries outside of the U.S. and Europe, in that like the locals pay a certain price for things, and then the tourists pay a certain price for things. But that only applies for like tourism activities, but food and gas, I mean, those are staples that everybody more or less paid the same for, and it's a tough way to live, for the people that don't make that much money.
Totally. Yeah, that's definitely been on my mind, especially passing through some of the more rural inland towns in Baja is, I mean, how could you afford to drive, outside of your region? I mean, you put yourself in their shoes and make the wages that they're making, and it's like that's, half a month's wage possibly that you're spending on a tank of gas or two. So, no, I can really appreciate the privilege that we have, not only bringing a foreign dollar here that is stronger, economically speaking, but also to just the amount of money that's being made here. It really puts things into perspective.
Yeah. What's been your favorite places so far in Baja?
Ooh. So I really love San Ignacio. I think just as far as a town goes, and seeing more of the culture, I guess, if you will, of Baja or Mexico, just because I think the further south I've gotten, the more gringos that there have been, and, inherently
that
less
middle
culture.
part of Baja is magical, like away from the north, away from the south. In the middle, either people are just passing through, or people who are flying in just never get that far. So yeah, I totally agree. That middle part's amazing.
Yeah, so San Ignacio has been great, and I'm really excited to check out a couple more of the towns that I did just pass through on my way south as we head north. Would love to actually stay in Guerrero Negro a little bit longer too. I did get those tacos at Muele, and they were
those tacos.
They were so good.
So good.
I'll
Yeah,
start
we
maybe
had some
stopping
friends
there.
that was just there yesterday and sent us photos.
Yeah, like, I know we're in Costa Rica, we're really jealous of Baja.
Yeah. Costa Rica doesn't hold a candle to Baja.
But don't say it too loudly.
Okay, sorry, we're
listening.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well, I would absolutely love to do a trip through Central and South America one day. So in reverse, grass is always greener. I'm just like, I hope that I get to make it that far one day. It looks epic.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying today that I can see the appeal of why people like it here. I mean, there's a lot to like about it, but I also feel like that the golden era of like people that are moving down here, expats relocating to Costa Rica, is probably behind us. 10, 20 years ago, people coming down here would have found, some kind of like paradise at the end of the rainbow. But I think the secret's for sure not a secret anymore. I think it's also now it's for people that are more well off. It's not quite take your US dollar and have it last longer here.
yeah.
There's always going to be a different place, right? Maybe it's going to have to be Nicaragua if we can get the autocrat out of the government. I saw in your four-wheel camper video that you said you went to school near Sacramento. I assume maybe you went to school in Davis. Where'd you go to school?
I did. Yeah, I went to school at UC Davis, and you really did a lot of research. That's awesome. Yeah, Woodland is very close. It was our neighboring town. I used to ride my bike out there on like training rides, but went to UC Davis. I studied environmental science and management and absolutely loved my time there. It is such a cool little town. Really farm to table in terms of your access to fresh food. The community is wonderful and bikeable. I apologize, we have the first sand buggies of the day.
Los Barriles.
Yeah.
That's all across Los Barriles.
Yeah, so many. But went to UC Davis, really loved it there, and graduated about 4 months before the pandemic started. So I finished up in winter of 2019, and
that's
gratefully had a job
very
lined
fortunate.
Up. Yeah.
Because I feel like a year later, you would have not had the college experience you were hoping for.
Totally, yeah. I mean, even if I had taken one extra semester, right, I would have been graduating virtually online. And so that was my brother's experience, unfortunately. So I witnessed it through him. But yeah, had the full college experience, and then yeah, moved away and got my first big girl job that wasn't working as a cashier at Trader Joe's. And again, was super fortunate to have that lined up going into the pandemic, because I feel like without it,
Though I do hear Trader
it would.
Joe's pay pretty well.
They do, they do.
And you
It's
get
fun
those cool
too.
Hawaiian shirts.
Yeah, yeah. So enjoyed it though.
So you were living in the city?
So I was living, actually at first, I didn't go straight into that government job that I had in the city. I moved down to Monterey, which is just south
Okay.
of Santa Cruz.
Yep.
And my degree was in environmental science, but I specialized in soils, so kind of a niche there. But I was working as a soil specialist for a commercial mushroom company. So the mushrooms that you
Okay.
buy at Costco, Monterey mushrooms, that's who I was working for at first.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, without saying too much about it, the atmosphere at that job was not great. The practices around the pandemic were less than ideal. And so I pretty soon after, within about 8 months, was looking for a different job and a slightly different career. I realized that I really liked working with people. And even if that was virtually, as opposed to being in a lab by myself, that's where I wanted to go. And that's how I ended up
Yeah.
in that next position. I was working for San Mateo County. So much more like proper Bay Area at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
So even though you had a normal pre-pandemic college experience, you had a very different the start of your professional career, sounds like.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like all the rules were thrown out the window, and it was my first
Yeah.
experience. I mean, it had internships, right? But as a salaried employee, really, I guess just a tumultuous time. That's the best I can say.
Yeah.
Didn't know what to expect already, just it being my first step into a career, and then everything, yeah, just changed really
Had it
rapidly.
been different? Do you think it would have been different if the pandemic, I mean, obviously, if the pandemic didn't happen, a lot of things would be different. But for specifically for your sort of start of your professional career, you think you would have stayed? Did you enjoy that job to the extent where if that wasn't a factor, you would have stayed there?
So I don't think so. And
No.
maybe unpopular opinion, and I don't want to say, I'm grateful for the pandemic. That's definitely not where I'm trying to take this or what I'm trying to say.
I mean, there
But
there are for sure good things that came out of it. A lot of bad things, but
yeah,
there are some good things that came out of it.
yeah. Well, I think for me, it was just a reminder of what I really wanted in life. And I'm
Yeah.
grateful to have had that pretty young. But actually, before I even went to UC Davis, I had considered purchasing a van because rent was so ridiculous. I was like, well, what if I just lived in a VW or something? That would work. And Davis is definitely not a great place to do that, being such a small
Yeah,
urban
and
area.
it's pretty hot in the summer.
Yeah.
I guess
It
you have
is
to go to
hot in
Santa
the
Cruz in the
summer.
summer.
Yeah, yeah. So I had considered it before and thought about it in the past, but just never took the leap. And so having this experience, graduating almost into the pandemic, a lot of the ups and downs with my career, and then transitioning to that remote position with the government, I just sat there one day, and I at the time was struggling a lot with mental health too, which I think a lot of us were during the pandemic, and just thinking, gosh, I've worked all these years, gone to school all these years for this, to pay half my salary in rent, to live with 5 other people, to sit at a desk all day and just like wait to punch the clock and be done. And is this really all that there is? And so that realization came after a meeting with my manager, who said, well, when you go to retire in 45 or 50 years, and my heart just stopped.
Yeah.
Wow,
I will
whoever
never
that
forget
is really has a way with words.
Yeah, I will never forget that conversation. And it just, that day, I sat there in my room mid-pandemic and just went, this feels right now, again, mental health included, like a low in my life. And if this feels this low, it's like, I gotta try something, because the worst case is I end up right back here. And that was kind of the catalyst for me trying to pursue all this.
Did you live in the city? Were you living in San
I lived
Francisco?
just south, yeah. So for
Okay,
anyone who's familiar, like
like
the
San
Hillsdale
Mateo,
area, yeah, San Mateo.
Hillsdale. Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know how that area is, but since then, there's been a lot more crime in San Francisco. Like, had that already started when you were still there?
Yeah, some of it had, and I think too there is a lot going on in terms of social movements. Like the Black Lives Matter movement was really not starting, obviously, but coming into the forefront. A lot of the protests had started in recent months as well, between that and, you know, just social welfare conversations really picking up speed during this time. And so being in the city was an interesting, or being near the city was an interesting experience at this time. Again, being younger as well and kind of just like thrust into all of this unexpectedly. I didn't have to deal with the crime myself, but I think everything felt very tense. You could feel the tension in the air when you went outside or when you went anywhere, really.
Yeah, I think maybe during that time, I'm guessing that was like 21, 22.
Yep.
It feels like during that time, that tension was there everywhere, like, because we felt it in Europe. You know, when we travel across, during the first year of the pandemic, we just didn't leave where we were. We stayed put for that whole year. And then when we first felt comfortable to leave the area, we crossed the border, seemed like everywhere we went, you know, mask up, don't touch anything. Even though, like, you know, the vaccine was out, but there was so much mutation, we didn't know if it was effective. So I feel like, you know, like you said about the mental well-being of everybody, took a toll globally. It wasn't just big cities, or because we were in a tiny village. We're in a tiny village of like 50 people.
But we can avoid all the
We can avoid it all.
Well, big city stress. Like
Yeah, but still, then there's different types of stress, you know? We had to go shop for groceries, and every time we went shopping, we bought so much food so we don't have to come back. It got to the point where the grocery store clerk asked us if we were provisioning a sailboat for crossing. We're like, no, there's 5 of us, and they're growing, they're eating a lot.
Yeah, man. Well, and I imagine too experiencing that time abroad where you maybe don't have access to as much of your community back home, and then also with your kids, must have been such a wild experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the big things when we came back from the U.S. I mean, when we came back to the U.S., we sought out people that we could, you know, relate with and be friends with, and you know, it's been a really, really interesting experience being abroad during that time, and then being back for a little bit, and now we're abroad again, you know. So it doesn't feel as far away as it is now, but you know, it's definitely something that we had to take a little time to kind of get used to. But for you, you know, it's interesting because your parents are now full-time, and your brother lives on the road now part-time, or
on vacation.
But
yeah, he's stationed when he's at work. He'll be there, but then he's able to be more mobile when he's.
So he's
back.
full-time in the camper, or just stationary part-time?
Yeah.
So was any of this like influenced by your choice to live full-time, or were they always thinking this?
I don't think they were always thinking this. I don't think any of us necessarily were, up until a point that we were, obviously. But yeah, I think for my parents at least, they've shared, and if they're watching this when this is played back, hi Mom and Dad.
Hello, Alexandria's parents.
Yeah, I think they definitely have expressed that they're really proud of me for pursuing a life that I want to live, if that's outside of the norm. And I think to an extent they've wanted to travel and see the country, at least stateside, like I have. So maybe in that sense. But in reverse, I would say that they've also inspired me to be here, right? They inspired that love for the outdoors and the appreciation of culture and people from areas that aren't where we're originally from. So I think it kind of comes back around to them maybe now, but they were definitely my.
But you beat them to the punch.
I did. I did. Yeah, and then my brother, I think for him, it just made sense. He had considered living on the road around the same time that I got on the road, but was in college still. So it didn't make a lot of sense, especially Colorado in the winter is pretty brutal in the areas that he's been in. So when he graduated, he also went straight into the workforce, and didn't make a lot of sense for him to try to pursue life on the road full time in the same way that I do. But I think for him, it's a great way too to save money. I think a lot of people, even outside my family, are finding, well, do I need to buy a house, or do I want to be able to be mobile if the opportunity presents and maybe save my money for that? And so I think that's more where his mindset has been. But I hope he does get to experience the travel component more so one day as well.
Have you done any traveling with them, with your parents or your brother, since you've been on the road? Have they, like, I mean, your parents, especially, if they're full time, they have more flexibility, I suppose.
Yeah, this past winter actually, so they got on the road in November, and I was up in the Oregon, Washington area at that time, and we immediately met up down in Washougal, Washington. I have some family that's in Portland, and so we hung out in that area and actually all got an Airbnb for Thanksgiving, which was really nice to see
Nice.
everyone and have laundry and showers. We all have that appreciation now for
Yes, for
a
sure.
timely Airbnb. And then we met up again for Christmas down in Las Vegas. So kind of did the snowbird migration and
Yeah.
spent part of that holiday season together as well before I came down to Baja. So it's been really fun. We were camping out by Lake Mead right before the holidays and got to show them some of my version of travel, since with the travel trailer they do stick more to the main roads. And that was
Yeah.
super cool to be lakeside and show them a little bit more in person, what I get to do all the time.
Yeah, that Lake Mead Government Point BLM. I mean, we spent a lot of time there, even with our trailer back in the day, and you know, show them that it's definitely possible. And
Yeah.
for us, like at the beginning, we spent a lot of time in campgrounds, but
Yeah, we're like,
you
oh,
know,
I think we're just supposed to be in RV parks with like retired couples.
Totally.
So that's
Yeah.
cool that you can show them that there's a whole like boondocking culture, and yeah, there's
how does Lake Mead look? How did it look when you were there? Was it? I hear that it's getting a little bit better.
In terms of water level or trash
Yeah.
or people? Yeah, all of the above.
yeah,
Maybe trash is worse. All the extra people going there.
Honestly, so this was my third, I guess, season having gone back 3 years in a row now to the Havasu and Mead areas, and trash was minimal. People seem to be doing a really great
That's
job,
good.
which is really nice to see these lands being taken care of, especially as more people have gotten on the road. It's not always the case. So, yeah, I was excited to see that, and I don't know, I was calling it kind of my budget Baja before I knew if I could come all the way down here, because just wide open beaches. I was down on Mead myself, didn't see anyone for 7 days. And the
Cool.
water level was great. So yeah, I mean, it's lovely as ever. Highly recommend if you guys are back in the States to visit, because it was great.
cool.
We were just saying the other day how much we miss winter in the desert, in the Southwest desert, like
Yeah, it's
Nevada, Arizona, California, because that was our stomping grounds from like November until March, basically, every year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And there's nothing like it, really. When you go abroad, what ends up happening is that you find outside of Baja and Central America, Mexico, there's far less like free wild camping options. So you really are spoiled in the US, and then when you leave, you kind of have to shift your expectations a little bit, because otherwise, you could be really disappointed with what you have to do, especially where we are now. It's so hot when you get to low elevation. They're just
we're in a little cabin.
Yeah, we're
with
like
AC.
but we're high enough. We're 4,000 feet now, so we're high enough where we don't have to run the AC. But
Yeah,
this, it's rough. But yeah,
Totally.
like
I know.
the smell of the desert with the creosote, and
yeah.
you
It's the
know
best.
when the temperature drops at night, like I just love that. So good.
Yeah, I will admit, again, grass is always greener. I'm so grateful to be here in Baja. But when I woke up this morning and the air was still, it was probably 81, 82 when the sun rose at 7:20. And I was just like, oh man, should I head back to Arizona? It is hot. It is hot. And yeah, there's just something special about the desert of the Southwest. And I mean,
Yeah.
even the southern portion of the Eastern Sierra, one of my favorite spots
Oh,
on the
so
road,
good.
no matter where I've been. And this time of year, it's
Right.
great because you just throw on a jacket and some pants, and it's the perfect
Yeah.
temperature, big mountain
Yeah.
backdrops. It's so
A
special.
little bit less people.
And hot
Yeah.
springs.
Yeah, hot
Yeah.
springs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like starting from like Ridgecrest, Trona Pinnacles, all the way up,
Yeah. That's a
past
good
Mammoth.
spot.
We were there, so we hadn't been there since 2017, and we were just
Mm-hmm.
there this past summer for a couple weeks. We went from first time driving over Tioga Pass from Yosemite. Yeah, no, Tioga Pass was something that we finally got to do. And since we also borrowed the foil camper, like you did,
Mm-hmm.
for
Yep.
they've been super nice to us. Like we were just hoping to borrow it for a couple of days to go to Overland Expo, but they're just like take it for a couple months while you're here. And how was that experience for you? And I know from seeing a couple of your videos about it, it was during a transitional phase for you, right? Because you
It
had
was.
been fed up with the bus, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So just very briefly, my bus, I had had it for about 4 months at this point, I think, maybe 3.5, and started having transmission issues. I thought, okay,
Hmm.
shoot, this could be the death of the bus dream. Just because the reason I switched to the bus was vans had skyrocketed in price with, the rage of van life. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went to the bus to hopefully save money and budget, have some more
Mm-hmm.
in the bank. And so when I blew through almost $20,000 in mechanical repairs in 3 months, I was like, okay, this is
Yeah.
no longer the budget option.
Yeah.
What's next? Because I was going to run out of money, even though I'm still making money online. It just was not enough to offset a cost, let alone if I continued having issues. So I sold that, and I actually don't tell U-Haul, but I threw all my stuff in a U-Haul and was camped out in the back of a U-Haul for a little
I could
while.
tell that was a U-Haul, even though you didn't show it in the video.
Yeah, they apparently can ban you for life from that, which
Really?
hopefully yeah, I mean, you're definitely not supposed
Wow.
to live in.
I
But
mean,
it
Bob
worked.
Wells from Cheap RV Living has made videos about how this is a great idea.
Maybe there's a rule
I mean,
because
it
they have
worked
Yeah,
to.
well.
maybe. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it worked well.
I've considered it like it's cheaper than getting a hotel, especially if you don't put any miles on it.
Totally. Yeah, and that was the thing, right? Of my money is dwindling, so getting a hotel or an Airbnb is not the move here. And I also needed wheels, so that was where the U-Haul came in, and it was pretty good timing. My cousin was actually getting married back in California, so I traded that in, rented a car, drove my dog and I back to California. And while I was there, I'd pretty much made up my mind. I think the bus has to go. It was still in Portland,
Mm-hmm.
getting a fix, getting a new transmission. So I had already paid for that, already out the money. But I posted my bus for sale, and a good friend of mine actually ended up buying it, and since has had not a
Ooh,
single issue. So I'm
of
so grateful
course.
for that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
knew everything that had happened, but it was all under warranty. So I told them that and said, good luck to you. It's been great. So
yeah.
hopefully that remains the
Well,
same.
good for them, but kind of sucks for you.
Right? It's like everything but the engine was brand new, and my fear was that the engine was going to go. So thankfully that has
Yeah.
not happened yet. But yeah, it came back down, and I thought, what am I going to do next? I've sold my bus. I'm in a rental car. I need a house, and was in California. So I had seen a couple of people working with four-wheel campers on this kind of trial basis, and thought, you know what? I'm just gonna shoot my shot. I'm gonna reach out and plug that I went to UC Davis. I have that local street cred, hopefully,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
for sure.
yeah. Yeah, worked with Dan over at Four Wheel Campers, and it was an awesome experience. It was also when I first started thinking about the truck camper. So it was a really great way for me to try this kind of different style of travel, and I absolutely fell in love with it. So it's definitely my gateway to the Bigfoot.
So you
Cool.
think pre foil camper loaner, you weren't considering truck camper?
I
Were you
think I
thinking
just,
another
at that
van?
point, I was not sure, honestly. Just I thought about the Scamp potentially, like the pull behind
Yeah, right.
trailer, but wasn't in love with that for the reasons we talked about. Vans were still astronomical in price.
Expensive.
Yeah, and so I'd started to think, I've done the build thing a couple times now. Maybe I'll get one of those like enclosed toy, not like a toy hauler, but the small little like 8 foot long trailers, and I'll just build that out pretty quickly.
Oh
It's
yeah,
got
like a
square
little
walls.
teardrop or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I was like, how hard can that be? Enough space for us in our gear, and then I can get a reliable truck. So I was already on the
Yeah.
thought of maybe I can get a reliable truck. And so it was a pretty quick jump as soon as I got in the
Okay.
four-wheel camper of this is actually super cool, and I can go on these, fun little ATV type trails compared to, what the bus could do. So, Yeah, hadn't really made the jump yet, but as soon as I got into it, it was a pretty easy choice.
But not a four-wheel camper. I mean, for sure not a new one, right? Because they're pretty spendy.
Yeah, yeah. If I could have afforded it, I might have jumped straight into that. I'll say it now and tomorrow. My dream is one of their flatbed models. I think, it's just so luxurious and exciting to think about having all of that space and capability. But definitely just out of my budget and didn't want to go into debt for something like that necessarily
Yeah,
and have a big
definitely.
loan out. So yeah, that's why I chose the older truck. It's an '06 with low miles, and it's been, knock on wood, very reliable for me. And then the camper that I fixed up.
I mean, you can't get a more reliable truck than an early Tundra, I don't think.
That's what I've heard, and that's definitely been my experience. I bought it with 109,000 miles on it, one owner,
Wow.
an older guy who used to take it fishing, and I don't think you can really do much better than that in terms of
Yeah,
an old
right.
truck find.
There's not a lot of wear and tear to the truck when you're fishing.
Yeah, right. They were like, well, he did tow, and his boat, I guess, was one of those like 7 or 8 foot little fishing boats.
Okay,
Okay,
right,
that's like a little
right,
dinghy.
right.
Yeah, I think we're okay.
I do feel bad though for these older guys that are like selling their motorhome, selling their boat, selling their truck, selling all this stuff. It's like, it's a good deal for me, but is it like a sad date for them? Like when they have to let it go,
Yeah,
but
yeah. If I ever let this truck go, it will be a sad day for me. Because
yeah.
like we were talking about, I've thought about what might be on the horizon, and I think for me that move would be towards a more capable camper, because the truck is, it can do more than I would ever dare to do, I think, in terms of just my travel style. But yeah, I'm gonna try to hold on to this truck as long as I can.
Oh yeah, I mean, as far as capabilities go, the sky's the limit for that platform. People take early Tundras around the world, if that's what you desire to do at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other bit too, is the international portion is I'm so tall and so large that it would be limiting in a lot of ways, I think. So having something a little bit more mobile.
You
Yeah.
can't fit into a container, I assume. You're probably 9, 10 feet tall,
I'm over 10 feet tall, and that's exactly what
over
I'm
10 feet
what I'm
tall.
thinking about next is in the future, fingers crossed it works out, I would love to do something like the Pan Am or potentially more international travels, and shipping is definitely a big consideration when that, comes to mind. So looking into more secure ways to ship a vehicle, I think going into a container is the best, and especially when it's your home and all of your belongings. So, yeah, if I do anything in the future, it would be something much shorter.
In your sort of early videos, like because you've gone through so many vehicles and now all the way to the truck and then the Bigfoot, how has your sort of content creation experience been from the beginning? And if you go back, because one of the first things we do is we go back to people's feed and see where it starts.
First video. Yeah.
A lot of people started with like a van tour or a truck or camper tour, stuff like that. Did you have aspirations for YouTube at the beginning, or did you have other videos that you just kind of threw up there and maybe like hid them because they don't fit in to the channel?
Yeah, maybe you saw my Instagram story the other day with my different thumbnails, if that's where this question's coming from.
Oh no, I don't know if I saw that.
Yeah,
Did you?
yeah.
Okay. I was like, that's not you. But yeah, I think that I just really was looking for a creative outlet during the pandemic. And so all the way back, I think my first video, that's not up any longer, but I can send you the unlisted link if you'd like to see how bad it is.
Okay.
Um, it was,
We've got
yeah,
so many bad videos going back to like, 2007. It was like probably
no,
360p is the resolution we uploaded in, or
oh
480p
man.
maybe.
So I had a bit of a leg up there. Yeah, a bit of a leg up there. I think 1080 is where I started, but still.
Okay.
Yeah. No, even for a while, I was like, oh, nobody needs 1080. I just go 720.
Yeah. Especially when you're uploading off a hotspot, if you don't have Starlink, it doesn't make sense to use all your data for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes you upload something and you're like, oh man, I screwed up. I got to fix it and re-upload a new one.
That was the worst when I was running on the limited data plan. It was always such a bummer.
So how
But
has it been for you? What was your sort of, beginning of your content creation process? Were you always sharing on social media as comfortable as you are now?
Definitely not. I think,
Yeah.
again, pre-pandemic, I was very much just a general user of Instagram, and I would watch some YouTube, but I actually wasn't even consuming that much long form content. It never,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, really occurred to me until the pandemic when I had all this time and started watching people on YouTube and thought, this looks kind of fun. So I went down to Best Buy and I had to order it online. She couldn't go into the store, and I got a little Sony A6000, like the very
Cool.
lowest Sony that you could get. And
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought anybody cared, but I did like a 20 questions about me video on YouTube, and I just threw it up there and thought, this is embarrassing. And what if my family and friends watch? Oh shoot! Like why did I do this? And
After
posted
it's live, you thought about this,
yeah.
not while you're
Well,
making it.
I'm surprised that I look extremely uncomfortable in the video, but I am surprised that I actually had the courage to post something. And again, in hindsight, I'm like, why does anyone care what my favorite color is? No one knows who I am. But again, I posted it and it went live, and I thought, oh, that was kind of fun. And I feel like maybe unlike some of the creator friends that I know, I actually really love editing. And that's where my joy comes from in terms of, content creation. And so I fell in love with the editing process and just having something to so deeply focus on creatively, and try to hone that skill, that I kept up with it, I think, for that reason. And so when I
Okay.
got into the van life style of content, actually, at that point, I wasn't even really posting very consistently. It was just whenever I kind of felt like it. I thought, oh, this could be, kind of fun. And I've seen a few people who have been documenting their builds, and I'm learning from them. And I think my hope was that in just sharing my journey, not knowing at all what I was doing, maybe I could serve as a bit of an inspiration like others had to me of, wow,
Yeah.
she doesn't know what she is doing at all. Her video skills are terrible, but she's doing it anyways. And yeah, I guess I just looked up to a lot of people during that time and hoped maybe I could even be a glimpse of that for somebody else, which is why I
I mean,
stuck
I
with
wouldn't
it.
I wouldn't say your video skills were terrible. Even going back to some of your early videos, because honestly, the bar on YouTube is pretty low. Like you can be up at the top 10% just
Mm,
by wanting to do better, right? And
yeah.
I think it's getting past that, like getting to the point where you can make a living on it. That's the real challenging part. And it's funny that you said that you love editing. Is that something that you have experience in, or is that something that you just kind of had to learn and figure it out once you got into it?
Yeah, learned and figured it out, but in hindsight, I was always the person when we had to make like a physics iMovie video. I'm thinking back to high school, like, I always volunteered to do it. I don't know, I loved editing software, even back to, iMovie and those very basic free ones that came on your computer way back when. So I think I
Mm-hmm.
always had that interest, but never considered myself to be much of a creative artistic person. I went to school for, science, and that was my thing. I was the science girl. So just never really explored it much, and it's been really cool to explore that side of myself and my passion for now trying to get a good shot and tell a story, because it's definitely not something that I envisioned for myself even a few years ago.
What kind of? I mean, I assume you're on a MacBook. Are you on Final Cut Pro, Premiere, DaVinci? Which one? What platform are you using?
Yeah. Final Cut Pro, and I'm exploring DaVinci, but I use that word very carefully because it is such a big platform. I don't know how anybody, fully learns DaVinci, but that's my
No,
goal,
right.
is eventually to really be working on DaVinci mostly. I think it's a super powerful platform.
Hmm. We just made the switch this last year, and I'm proud to say I haven't opened Premiere in probably a good 6 months. But
Nice.
I think the motivation going from Premiere as a subscription service to DaVinci is much more significant because Final Cut Pro, like, you don't have to pay a monthly fee; you already own it.
Yeah, well, and I think I shied away from Premiere. When I very first started, I thought, well, everyone uses Premiere, it looks like, right? When you Google how to do YouTube, everyone says,
Yeah, all the tutorials are in Premiere, right?
yeah, pay for and download Premiere. And I did, I think, maybe my first month download Premiere. And not only for the level that I was creating at then, but even now, was it very overwhelming. It's just such a powerful tool that I didn't feel like I would even use half of necessarily at the time.
Mm.
But also I had seen and heard a lot of folks having issues where they'd edit the whole video and
The
they'd hit
stability.
export and the whole thing it would lose their whole project, or especially when getting on the road, with the lack of internet connection that I had, there would be connection problems, or the
Yeah.
file sizes are massive. So I think for just simplicity's sake I shied away, and I found that with add-ons and plugins, Final Cut can do 80% maybe of what Premiere can, and
Hmm.
100% of what I need to do. So it's been great so far.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's tons of features in Final Cut that almost nobody uses, So I
Totally.
think to switch to DaVinci would just be like a cool, hip, trendy kid move, but it's not necessary.
Are you trying to hip
Yeah.
cool?
No, I'm
kid?
I'm a cheap editor who doesn't want to pay the monthly fee anymore. But we
Yeah,
still
I
end up
mean,
paying the monthly fee because I still use Photoshop and Audition, So
Yeah.
yeah.
totally. Yeah, I think for me the draw for DaVinci is now that I feel like I have my workflow down a little bit better, I really want to
Hmm.
start getting more creative with things like color grading and shooting in
Yeah.
log profiles or Cinetone profiles on
Yeah.
Sony. And so that's kind of the next step for myself, at least, is okay, now I have the basics down. I feel like I understand my camera. Let's explore this additional, I guess, just artistic path. And I think DaVinci is really powerful in terms of color.
You feel very comfortable on the camera. Is that something that you think you naturally had? Of course, it's a little awkward, like your first video, but you seem very natural. Like, what is your trick to? I'm very nervous on the camera. I'm like nervous right now. So what are
She
your
is.
tips to
She
being?
is.
I like watching your videos.
I mean, I can tell how difficult it is because for you being a solo traveler with your dog, a lot of the times it's challenging to kind of turn the camera on and start talking because, you know, there's nobody there to hear you but the camera. So you have to almost put your mind in the way that like there's a person behind this camera that I'm talking to, right? What is your process to get comfortable in front of the camera?
Totally. It's definitely gotten easier. I will say that. Again, I can send you those first few videos if you have any interest or if you need a good laugh. Uh, the robotic gestures, and I was so uncomfortable. So I think a lot of it has just come with time and practice. Now I've been doing this really consistently since, I guess, early 2022. So 2 years now of I'm posting every single week or as close to as I
Hmm.
can. And I think it's just a skill that I've had to try to develop. I also think, though, too, one of my favorite parts about doing this work is being able to meet the people who watch the videos in person or like this
Hmm.
virtually, and to hear feedback and, oh, I really enjoyed this and that, or it's been so cool to
Hmm.
watch, because it allows me to imagine those people then when I sit down to record. It's like I'm telling a story for those people who are tuning in every week, that community that I have now gratefully gotten to know, whether again online or in person at events or Overland Expos. It's been so fun to get to meet them because it does allow me to imagine the people that I'm creating for and not just my camera. Because, yeah, staring into a black hole is not the most inspiring thing usually.
Yeah, remembering to look at the lens, not the screen.
Man, I still mess that one up often. I'm like, oh wow, my hair is looking funky today, you know?
Which Overland Expos were you at?
Yeah, I went to Overland Expo West in Flagstaff, and that was my
Okay.
first event. But I think this year I'm going to try to go to at least three of them.
Oh wow.
Probably West again in Flagstaff. My brother's
Hmm.
actually getting married in Colorado right around the time that Mountain West is happening, so
Oh,
I'll
perfect.
go there.
Cool.
And then I usually end up in the Pacific Northwest, late summer and fall. So I think, yeah, my trajectory this year is going to make sense for me to try to go to all three, and really
Yeah.
get more involved in the overland community, because I don't want to discourage anybody and say it's different in a clicky way, but it's definitely different than the general van population I found, or the school bus population. So it's been cool to explore, I guess, this additional community that I didn't feel like I really had access to in the past.
Yeah. I mean, we've only been to three, and our first one was in 22, and it was also Flagstaff. And our motivation I think I mentioned a little bit earlier back then, was just the lack of community that we felt over the pandemic and being overseas for 4 years. And we really felt like that we needed to kind of reconnect with people, and we were luckily able to do that at Flagstaff really well. Since then, we've been to Mountain West that same year, and then we went to PNW last year. Mountain West was just okay. I mean, you have to be there anyway because your brother's wedding, but
we had a lot of classes, so I think we were stressed because it's the first time we were teaching classes. Okay. So it was a lot of stress.
But we also had a lot of classes in PNW this last time too, but PNW was much more fun. I think mostly because that Loveland County Fairground location is not the best.
It was dusty.
And it can be a little hot, and then you're camping kind of in dirt, so, you know.
Good to
You're
know.
such a glamper, Dan.
I'm such a glamper.
Dan's a glamper.
Yeah.
He needs his lawn.
Yeah. I need real showers, not that like scrubby thing that they try to sell you in the corner.
The geyser, I think, system or
The
whatnot.
geyser, right.
It'd be really nice to have one of those geysers right now.
It's true. It's true. I mean, it's a good idea. I shouldn't talk too much smack about it.
No.
For sure. No, I'm really excited though to go to Flagstaff. Flagstaff was an awesome event, and the camping, I mean, really cool.
Yeah,
I thought
Flagstaff
being
camping
more
is the
in
best.
Forest.
Yeah.
The walk was a bit
Yeah.
far, and my dog is very stubborn, so there was a lot of her on my shoulders if anyone saw me. I had a lot of people going, "You're such a good dog, Mom," 'cause like the 1.5 mile walk back.
Oh my
she's
God,
just
on your
on my
shoulders?
Yeah. Well, because it's so far, I can only carry her, and my biceps are not the strongest, so shoulders was much easier. And we'll have to work on that for this year.
I bet doggy stroller next year,
Yeah.
doggy backpack.
What about those 4 legs? Those 4 legs got to do something.
One, it's a golden retriever thing, I think. She is just stubborn because we did a hike around Mount Hood this past summer, and she was doing 17, 18-mile days in the heat with her own little pack on.
Yeah. They can do it if they want.
Yeah.
And she's like, I think I'm done.
That's so funny. Did you have her like when you lived in your house, or
Yeah, how long have you had her?
Or is she just a van overlanding pup?
Yeah, so mostly just a road pup. I got her, she was about 5 months old, and I was, let's say, 2/3 of the way through my build. And I'd been thinking about getting a dog for a long time, but it was just never the right time, and it requires such a certain temperament, I think, to really enjoy and be successful on the road, that I was nervous about getting maybe an older dog that was really set in their ways and that this would be a lot for. And then also nervous about getting like a puppy or a dog that wasn't, didn't have the right energy or temperament for the road. So I looked around for a bit and was actually staying in Santa Cruz one night, went out and got a beer with a friend and just had parked on the street and scrolling through my phone, looking at Craigslist actually, because dogs had been popping up on a lot of the adoption sites, but at least in that area, it had been really difficult to find, again, kind of that sweet spot dog that also had a temperament that I thought would do well on the road. Mm-hmm. And I saw somebody rehoming they'd had her for, I guess, 2.5 months at that point, rehoming their young golden retriever. And I thought, man, what a dream dog. I've always wanted a golden retriever.
Fine print does not like Overland Expo.
Yeah, I'll just shoot him a quick email. I forgot about it even and woke up the next morning to go watch sunrise, and they had responded and said, "Can you come see her today?" And I was like, oh, shoot. Wow. Okay. Am I going to go take a look at a dog? Because this is the first time I really went seriously considering it. And yeah, short story, 2 hours later, I was there meeting her in a park on a rainy day. And unfortunately, she was really sick when I got her. So it was a really long path to health and recovery. But I have photos from just the moment I set her in the van. She curled up and just fell asleep on the front, passenger seat. And the rest is history. She absolutely loves the road.
Aww.
At 5 months, they're already fairly decent sized, right? It's not like you didn't get her as a tiny puppy?
Yeah, she was pretty underweight when I got her, so she actually kind of was like a tiny puppy. Yeah, she was about 17 pounds, which for a golden is...
that's like a fat cat.
She was pretty tiny. So she's done a lot of her growing on the road and a lot of her coming back to health and life too. So it's been really cool to see her grow and flourish, not only physically, but mentally and with her confidence too out here.
Yeah. Yeah, because I imagine when you were living with 5 people in San Mateo, like having a big dog wasn't really an option.
Definitely not. And I think too, I was just so focused, whenever I wasn't at my desk working, it was how fast can I pack the car to get to Tahoe? Or how fast can I
Yeah,
drive up
right.
to
Get out of
and go
town.
for a hike? And
Yeah.
so I think at that point in my life, having a dog too, it wouldn't have been fair. It would have been a hindrance
Yeah.
in my eyes of like, oh, shoot, like I gotta, deal with the dog. But having traveled a bit on the road before my van was done, solo, I feel like having a dog has been a really wonderful thing for me on the road. Not only a companion for travel, but also just getting to experience the road in a different way, kind of through a dog's
Hmm.
eyes, has been so special.
When you did the Colorado Trail, I mean, she didn't go with you, did she?
She did not. She was too young then. She was only, I guess, yeah, she wasn't even a full year old. She was just about to turn a year. And
Okay.
so I actually had someone in Durango near my brother sit her, and that was the
Hmm.
hardest part of the trail was to not have her for those
Yeah.
25 or 26 days. And I vowed, we're not doing that again unless she's like with my parents or somebody that, I can
Yeah.
be checking in with all the time, much easier getting photos from or having them, come meet me somewhere to see her. So, yeah, that was really tough. And I'm excited to say, though, now that she's going to be 3 this year, either this summer or next, I'm going to try to attempt the Colorado Trail again with her because it is a dog
Oh
friendly
wow.
trail. And I think she'll
Okay.
finally have the stamina and hopefully better legs than an Overland Expo to
Yeah.
do the hike.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe not so stubborn.
Yeah.
I mean, she'll have to carry
Yeah,
her
well, I
own
mean,
gear too, probably, right?
somewhat. So I did the Timberline Trail and it circumnavigates the base of Mount Hood. Sorry about that.
Hmm.
In Oregon. And so we did that and it was about a 50-mile trip over 3 days. She did great. Didn't carry her own gear though because it was just going to be warm and a lot of the river crossings
Mm.
too. I had to carry her and I just ended up packing all of hers as well because I figured it'd be easier to have it on my back than to carry a dog who also has their own gear when I needed
Hmm.
to. So I think it'll depend on temperature. I might have
Yeah.
a bag that she carries part of the time through some of the higher elevations where it'll be cooler. But leaving Denver, especially now having done the trail, it's just way too hot and exposed there.
Yeah.
And with her long hair, it's everything to manage her temperature as best I can.
And some parts of that trail is sort of just on the side of the highway, isn't it?
Not much, actually. There's a
Yeah.
bit of road walking, but I'd say under 20 miles out of the whole 500. It's pretty small.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because our friends did Winter Park to Durango, right? I
Cool.
think that's a section of the whole trail.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
beautiful.
that was sort of in between your campers. Have you found other
Yeah.
things living this life? Obviously, having a pet is, brings some limitations on with the heat and places that you might not be able to go, like national parks. Are there
Yeah.
other things that you feel that challenges you living this
Mm.
lifestyle? That's maybe unique to
Yeah.
you that other people may not think about when
Yeah.
they consider living on the road.
Totally. Yeah, I think the biggest in terms of having the dog, we'll go there, I guess, first, is she is a very, very friendly, happy dog. Unfortunately, while on the road camping out in BLM, and I don't say this to scare anyone, but it's just something that I hadn't really, I guess, considered as much. She has this really long 30-foot tether that if I'm not, watching her, I have her on, especially when she was younger, because she's just so explorative, right? She's curious about everything, and for her safety and also wildlife safety, I just have
Hmm.
always had her on her lead. And that really started to shift this past year because unfortunately she was attacked multiple times by different dogs out on
Hmm.
BLM while she was tethered to the rig. And that
Wow.
has brought about some fear based reactivity from her now, where if she sees
Yeah.
another dog and she's on her leash, she feels, I think, trapped and stuck. And so we've really been having to work through a lot of that on the road, which, I mean, having a golden retriever, everyone thinks, oh, she has to be the most friendly. And she is. But the
Hmm.
fear and the reactivity that's come from some of these experiences for her have been difficult to navigate. And I'd say that really affects us now in terms of where we'll stay. being in campgrounds is pretty much off limits now because there's always going to be dogs running around, and that's just really scary for her to, again,
Yeah.
feel stuck in. Being down in Baja has been quite the experience. As long as everyone's off leash, she's fine. But if she's on lead, and it's not been the Baja dogs, it's been the other American and Canadians actually with
Yeah.
their dogs off leash, that'll rush her, and we've had, a couple of scuffles there. So I think it's really changed how we camp in terms of the amount of seclusion or isolation that I pursue. It's nice to have a quiet site, but it's also really trying to make sure that she feels safe and secure on the road. And so we'll tend to stay in areas that are much less populated or, on the outskirts of the busier areas, just to make sure that we're all having a good time. I would hate to have her out here and for her to be constantly stressed. So it's a priority that would not be even a thought in my mind probably if it was just me.
Do you feel like having a dog as a solo female traveler is something, I mean, it's obviously part of it is a bit of a security thing too, right? For any kind of traveler or solo alone. Like dogs can hear things quicker than we can, especially at night if something's happening. Like how much of that do you think is like plays a factor in your travel? Like do you feel safer having her around? Or would you not travel if you didn't have a dog with you?
Yeah. I don't think that I wouldn't travel if I didn't have a dog with me, but I definitely do appreciate her presence from a safety aspect. And it's not that I feel unsafe. I think if I could tell anything to another solo female or solo person out here, I would say that a lot of the safety concerns that I had initially pretty quickly melted away. I think for the most part, I mean, people are good and they're not out here looking to harm you. And so as long as you're staying places that aren't known to be, dangerous inherently, I think I at least feel comfortable there. I will say though, having her kind of as an extra security blanket is really nice. And she, like you said, she'll hear things from a mile away. She actually started barking because she heard a van coming. It turned out to be my friend when we were up in Bahia de Los Angeles. I think my friend was probably still over a mile and a half out, and she started barking.
Wow.
What the heck is going on, But we hadn't seen anyone for days, and I think she was just like,
Their
hey,
van has like a special transmission click that needs to be looked at.
I have no idea, but yeah, just a ProMaster coming down the road, and it took at least another 5 or 6 minutes for them to get there. But it's that, sort of thing. She's very protective. She sees us as her home, and we're, family. And so she will jump in between me and a stranger if she doesn't know them. She'll jump in between me and a dog if they're approaching. And, I guess really appreciate that peace of mind that comes with having her as well, in terms of, just safety as a solo person, but also companionship. It's so nice to have someone to talk to, so I don't just look like a crazy person talking to myself.
So sometimes that camera is pointed at the dog as you're making a little soliloquy on camera.
Yeah. It's always fun to write your camera up and then someone sees you and you're just like, hi, please ignore me.
Yeah, right. You just have to, I mean, by now you realize like it's okay if they think I'm crazy, right?
Yeah, it is what it is. And you know what? I've been, kind of fingers pointed or like, haha, like pointed fun at before, like, oh, with her big camera, especially now with my big old microphone on it. But I just have to remind myself, I'm like, you know what? They just wish that they could make money out here with their camera. So I'm...
Yeah, that's right.
I tell myself that of like, you wanted this, like, this is cool.
Yeah. What kind of camera do you use? You were on a A6000, but I assume you've upgraded since?
I have, yeah. It actually took me quite a while. I really wanted to feel like not only was I committed to doing this, but I think the best camera, it's not a hot take. A lot of people say this, but it really is the one that you have. And so for a long time when I was doing international travels, I had a GoPro. And so stepping up to the A6000 from a GoPro was like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And I can switch the lenses, wild. And so I stayed on the 6000 for a long time and then upgraded from the kit lens after about a year and a half. I felt like, okay, I'm really liking this, and, let's get that 18-105. So not a full frame, but let's just have some more range. And then once I felt like I had not outgrown that necessarily, because I think you can stay on that system forever, and it's not necessarily about the shots, but about the story. I was
But it's
looking
got
to
its
explore
limitations.
more. Yeah, and I was looking to get into, more of the color profiles and really explore more of what Sony had to offer. So I stuck with Sony, and now I'm on the A7 IV, which I have absolutely loved. And purchasing this camera, I'm like, unless I drop it off a cliff, I don't think there's a reason that I will have to ever, upgrade. This camera is much more than I needed. But I just saw it as kind of a next step and not wanting to half step and then need to purchase, another camera in the future. So, yeah, but I absolutely love it now.
We're shooting on an A7 IV right now. I don't know if you can tell, but
That's amazing.
what lenses are you using?
Right now I'm shooting mainly just 2 down here. Well, 3, I guess. I have a 35 prime, just a Zeiss
Oh yeah,
lens.
people
but
love that 35 prime.
It's awesome. It's all I brought with me on the Colorado Trail, and to this day, if I only brought one lens, it would probably be that one, just in terms of
Wow.
its size. And
Yeah.
I think the quality for the price, also being someone more on a budget, is exceptional.
Is it a
Even been able-
1.8?
It's a 2.8 is what I have.
2.8,
I didn't
okay.
get a 1.8. Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, for what I do and Sony's ability, the sensor in low light, I think it's still more
Yeah.
than most
Yeah.
other lenses have afforded me. And then I also have 2 f4s. I have I guess I just purchased the 24 to 105, which I've really been enjoying. It's
Yeah.
just a really nice mid-range. Again, not too
Yeah.
heavy. I can hold it in my arm for minutes at a time without feeling like it's going to fall off, but still affords me that range. And as someone who is shooting fully by herself, it's nice to be able to get a variety of shots and, different
Yeah.
depths with one lens and not
I
constantly.
feel like
have
that 24 to 105, if you're only gonna have one lens, that's the one to get. Even though it's an f4, but you still get plenty of shallow depth of field at 105.
Yeah, I've really been loving it, and I've paired that actually for Baja. I bought what I consider my dream lens. I got the 100 to 400, and that's, I think, the 4 to 5.6, which down
Yeah.
here for wildlife has been
Yeah.
so fun to play with. So very much still learning
We have that
it.
lens too. In fact, that's the lens that basically lives on her camera.
I'm a sucker for birds, so in Baja, I fell in love with that lens. Like, I was so scared to use it. I'm like, this thing is so huge, and like, it just was overwhelming. But in Baja, it's like, I have to shoot, and I just like, it pushed me to make my everyday
Totally.
lens.
So you're talking headshots. Is that with the 35 usually?
So lately, it's been mostly the 24 to 105, actually.
24.
I find, especially just with my arm length, if I'm on
Yeah,
the
it's
35,
not far enough for a 35.
I'm just close enough to get like the top to bottom, which is not usually
Okay.
the ideal shot.
No.
But it's very intimate. People love
I've
being me,
Yeah.
getting up and close, seeing all
And
your
for the Colorado
pores.
Trail, it's great. Yeah, it's for the Colorado Trail. That was all I had, so I worked with it, and it was great. Just a different feel for sure. But I find that the 24 mil is perfect to
24
not
is good.
distort your face so much, but still, have more in your frame of view as opposed to just this little bit.
Are a lot of your shots on tripods?
I'd say I actually do mostly handheld. Some things are on
You do
tripods,
handheld?
especially now with the 1 to 400, just because being stable with the wind and the sand and all of that is beyond
Yeah, that's
my
challenging.
skill level. So, yeah, a lot of my
Yeah.
longer range shots are all on the tripod, or if I'm setting up camp and I want to just have more of an establishing shot, that'll be on a tripod since I am just solo. But everything else is much more run and gun, and I've just tried my best to be as stable as I can. And I think also Sony's optical steadying abilities are really exceptional. And combine
Yeah.
that with a bit of Final Cut Pro post editing, it's worked out
Yeah.
okay for me.
I think it's 7.4 is a great platform, but just don't watch any new reviews of new cameras that get released, because every time something new comes out, and then you're
That's
like,
the
God,
downfall, Dan.
I wish I had that. That sure looks nice.
Yeah, well, and I've just kind of not built out. There's so much you could purchase for when you get into cameras. It's like a never-ending hobby.
Oh yeah,
But
it's a black hole for your money.
I feel like as soon as I got fully into Sony and I was committed a couple years in, I have my favorite lenses now. I know when to use which tools. Everyone switched to Fuji. And I was like,
I mean, people have
oh,
been switching to
shoot, that
Fuji
looks
for a long
nice.
time now,
Yeah.
but I feel like
Yeah.
The thing about Fuji is that they finally got to the point where their IBIS is good and then their autofocus is good.
For sure. Well, and I think I've been able to supplement that. I'm not seriously considering switching, but even a day or two ago, I think I just saw Fuji release their new X100 VI or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah,
And everyone's now
X106.
selling their. Seen so many bodies for sale this morning on stories and whatnot, because everyone's pre-ordering
Wow.
their new body. But I think you have to just.
Well, the
find what works
X100
for you.
series is it's a fixed lens. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you can't. That's all you got. I mean, which is
Yeah.
kind of like you shooting with your 35, right? Like, you just work with
Yeah.
it. But you know,
For
a lot of
sure.
those people paid a bundle of money for their X100 Vs.
Well, and I think for a while there was a shortage, right? You couldn't get one
Yeah.
if you wanted
They
to purchase.
stopped
So
letting
were
people
charging,
order.
$2,000 for a body that originally maybe cost them 12 or 1300, which is wild.
Right.
Absolutely wild. But yeah, I think too for me, I'm not classically trained in photo or video. I grew up with a mom who liked to take photos, but it was very much, families on vacation, nothing professional necessarily. And so I'm still very new to this world and learning. And I find that what's been the most exciting to me is learning about all of it and also getting creative. And so using something like a Prime, my 35, or I recently just got a Canon AE1, and so I'm excited to develop all of that when I
cool.
get back to the States.
That is what
Yeah.
I learned photography on, AE1.
Yeah. And like imposing these limitations on yourself, I feel forces you to think outside the box and get creative. It's nice to have versatility. It's nice to be able to, zoom in as close as you want, or, do make any of the adjustments that you want in post. But just working with what you have and having those limitations, I think, for myself at least, has really forced me to think more about what I want to have in frame and how I want to set up a shot. And I think ultimately is going to push me to be a better videographer, if you will, or that's the hope at
Yeah.
least. So yeah,
sure.
It's been fun to have a limited arsenal.
And with that AE1 and those FD lenses, get an adapter for your A7 IV, and that is a lot of fun. We've got a couple of Canon FD vintage lenses that we don't use it a lot for things that actually go online, but it's super fun to play with. And in fact, like getting into the photography fundamentals, because you're forced to use manual mode, and you're forced to dial everything in exactly the way that it needs to be. So yeah, that's really fun. You'll have a lot of fun, and that's also another way to play with your camera without spending a bunch of money on film.
That would be lovely. Yeah, because I mean, I knew it was going to be another expensive hobby. I have too many of those by now. But
Well, if you
it's
incorporate
just-
it into your videos, then it's kind of a tax write-off, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I'm hoping to. I make videos every week, which is both awesome and stressful, right? I know you all
Yeah.
release videos often as well. I think it's great because
Not
it
every
forces
week. We can't play that algorithm game. That's too much.
That's what we can't do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it forces me to just continue creating and not,
Yeah.
have big lulls, because I feel like for myself, it's been good incentive to create every day or almost every day. At the same time, though, thinking especially now about, shooting more film, and, oh man, it'd be so cool to do, series have been done about Baja backwards and forwards, but to do a longer summer series or something and be able to incorporate the film photos that I'm taking in the actual video that I'm going to produce. So it's definitely given me a lot of ideas for what I want to do in the future and where I want to take things from here, as opposed to, like you said, just kind of creating on that cyclical algorithm cycle or path. It serves a purpose, and if it helps you grow, that's great. But I think I'm starting to lose the desire to keep feeding into it as much as I have, and maybe create more meaningful long-form pieces, hopefully, in the near future.
Yeah, that's actually something that we heard a lot of people talk about. Like, do you feel like, as far as being a creator, do you feel like YouTube continues to be, I mean, obviously from a revenue generation purposes, it's got this built-in, revenue, but, I think I've heard you talk about it in some of your videos, which is like diversifying that income just in case that we're ever to end or dry up for some reason.
Yes, I think diversification of income is so important, especially in this space, but also just working for yourself, right? Is having those
Hmm.
multiple options when it comes to making money. And as someone who is on my own, my job, my income is all that supports me. And so it's even more important, I think. And it's really influenced how I create, at least in terms of the timeline over the past few years, because in transitioning from that, full-time 9 to 5, where I got a paycheck biweekly, to I make money when I create things or when I work with a
Hmm.
brand has been a big shift. And it's not that I dislike creating weekly, but there have definitely been times where, oh man, if I could have just an extra day to work on this, I could, really have this match my vision, or I could make this work better, in my opinion, for what I'm trying to create. But it's due to a brand, or if I don't publish on this day, is the algorithm not gonna push my content? And so I think
Yeah.
there's been some frustration on my side from that, just because having that extra time and ability for such a creative pursuit, I think, is what makes it creative work. But also, I have to support myself. So this
Hmm.
year, I'm really focusing on increasing my revenue streams. I am actually really excited to be working with two different friends. This is kind of first news, but I have a friend
All
who owns
right,
a
we're
coffee
getting a
shop.
little, yeah.
Yeah. I have a friend who owns a coffee shop down in San Diego, and she selects and picks all of the beans from small women-owned sustainable farms across South America and Africa
Cool.
as well now. She just expanded there. And I have another friend who is a very well-known designer in the overland slash Instagram world. You might know who I'm referring to. And she does really, really exceptional work for branding and design. And so she's going to be designing the packaging, and my friend is going to be procuring the beans, and we're actually working together to launch a physical product. And I'm going to be having some roasts of coffee come out later this year, which I'm really excited about.
Wow.
Wow,
So
that's
trying to
exciting.
Yeah.
diversify, trying to get into a bit of a new space. I love
Yeah,
coffee,
because I
which is
see
very
you working
exciting.
coffee into your videos
Uh,
fairly
it is
frequently lately.
it is my ritual. Yeah, I really love a good cup of coffee. Have definitely been excited to find good beans down here as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
so doing things like that, I think, is going to help just provide more stability, and also allow me to maybe step back from working, with direct ads in my work as much, which
Yeah.
ultimately would be my goal, is to maybe have overarching sponsors, but not so
Yeah.
many ads in the video. So yeah,
Have
I guess
you, so the brands that you've worked with, besides people
content.
that you already know, have you approached them yourself, or have most of them been the one that who have approached you?
I'm the wrong person to ask about this, unfortunately, because I do work with an agency. Actually, I have a team that represents myself, and they're actually, I think, representing quite a few of the nomad van lifers who create
Yeah.
on a more weekly basis over on YouTube. And so I do have representation in that sense. And a lot of the work is them reaching out to brands, but
Okay.
also once I think brands work with, and I'd say Blue Eddy is my biggest sponsor. I've been working with them now for about a year and a half, and I'm working with them
Mm-hmm.
through the end of this year as well, which I'm very excited
Mm-hmm.
about because I use their product. It's what powers my Starlink around the clock. Um, but I'll be working with them again this year, and once you have a relationship through the agency, I find that it's been much easier, if you do good work, to have that renewed. And so now, instead of doing these one-off partnerships, I'm working much more long term, which I think for myself is the first
Yeah.
step in kind of transitioning to having, again, just more channel sponsors as opposed to each individual video.
Yeah. Right. So in that sense, do you feel like that aspect of your income is going to help stabilize any sort of ups and downs with what YouTube might do in the long run?
Definitely. Yeah, having a stable paycheck, or, being on a longer term contract is really big peace of mind. So as much
Mm-hmm.
as sometimes it can be a bummer, you feel like maybe you're sacrificing some of that creativity, having peace of mind, having stable income, I think ultimately is going to allow me to create more organically, as opposed to feeling like, oh, I have to make up a video for this new random product that I've, only tried a couple times. Now I feel like I have more stability, I have more freedom to be creative, and
Mm-hmm.
only work with products and companies that I actually use and really believe in. I think it's super important to not just try to, throw things at your community, especially if you're trying to create and foster like honesty and trust. I really don't want to just be working with folks to make a buck. I want to be working with them because I believe in their product and think that my community could benefit.
Yeah, and it comes across in the content too. It comes out more organically, right? So it doesn't feel like you're selling something, and it doesn't feel like you're trying to get somebody to buy something, which can always be a challenge when you come across somebody who's reaching out directly for a one-off promotion. It's like, I'm not going to do that just for the money, because it's going to it's going to be end up being a lose-lose for everybody. So I feel like it's great that you can find brands that work with you. And we only work with a couple of brands on a long-term basis like that. And that's the same reason. We only work with them because we actually use their stuff every day.
Yeah.
So
well, and the cool
that's
part
great.
too has been a lot of the partners that I've had over the last year or so, because it's really up until the last year, I wasn't working with brands. I was a really small creator, and just my YouTube ad revenue, which is tumultuous and low. That was my only income from YouTube. And so I've worked with companies who I'd say probably 90 to 95% of the brands, I can think of maybe one right now that I wasn't actually already using before the partnership, which has been really cool, because these are brands that reached out and I said, heck yes, I actually use this electrolyte every day, or you're my greens powder anyways. Like, this is so perfect because I'm already using it. And I think there's no better way to work with a company than that.
Do you so you enjoy working through an agency? I mean, obviously, they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you, right? So you don't have to be the one reaching out to form these long-term relationships. And is that kind of how you foresee the growth happening within your content creation?
I hope they're not watching this. Yes, possibly. No, it's okay. I have enjoyed working with my agency, and I do enjoy working with them. They've done great work at getting these longer term partners for my channel and for my community. I will say, though, it really is tied pretty intimately into working with the algorithm. And so I think,
Right.
the further I can get away from that, which ultimately would be my goal, is to put out content that I feel is finished and good creative work, which doesn't always align with a weekly schedule. I think the more and more difficult it will be to partner traditionally, I guess, through an agency, because that's really what they're looking for is, 3 Instagram reels a week or 2 YouTube videos every month. And if I can't guarantee that, I think it would be difficult. And so I see some growth happening in terms of maybe stabilizing my income throughout this year. But far out into the future, I am definitely, even right now, reaching out to brands and trying to just build a relationship with them, even if it's not, compensation based, just trying to foster relationships, introduce myself. It's also part of the reason why going to the expos has been a priority of mine, is to go up and shake someone's hand in person and become more involved in the community. So that way in the future, when I am ready to kind of take the jump and go towards more organic based creation, I'm not doing that in free fall, hopefully, but I have existing relationships and partners that I might be able to work with again on that more long-term sponsorship basis.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, it's one of these like the snake eating its tail kind of thing, right? When people ask you about how do you support your travels, then it's like your travel supports your travels, but at some point, how do you make it so that it still feels organic, and you still are able to do what you want to do rather than where the traveling and the income dictates you to do, So
sure.
like I guess along those lines, like what are your sort of near to medium terms as far as travel plans? I mean, obviously, Baja for the next few more weeks. Like
Yeah,
where
Baja
have
for a
you
bit.
seen in the U.S. and are you staying within North America for the time being?
Yeah, Baja for a few weeks. And then throughout this coming year, I have some plans of exploring places that I have not seen yet. It's kind of based around some tentative plans. I've already talked a bit about the camper being a limiting factor. So that is something that I'm potentially working on this year that might skew where I go. But I would say through 2024, I will likely be staying in the American West,
Yeah,
partially because of
3
that,
expos,
partially.
right? So summer
Yeah.
going around.
Yeah, I have my brother, he's getting married this year. I have some family things going on that I want to be more present for, so that will likely take me through the end of this year, depending on how all of that goes. And fingers crossed, I'm really hoping to make it up to Alaska next summer, so 2025, and spend part of spring and early summer traveling through BC and the Yukon at least, which I'm really excited for because I've never done that, on road. I've only ever flown into cities up there. And then depending on how everything goes, either 2025 or 2026, I'm really considering starting the Pan American Highway. So that's a really
cool.
big
Yeah.
decision to make and a long-term plan that I'm very excited for. But I just want to make sure that the timing is right. And so
Yeah.
it'll depend on a couple of things when I really
I mean, if you
commit
go
to
up to
that.
Alaska summer 25, then you naturally just keep going south, right? Keep going south until there's no more south to go.
Yep, I know. And that's what I told myself is if I'm already driving up there, like I might as well
Yeah, if
start
you're already
then,
going to do
right?
it, right?
Yeah.
We should
Yeah.
be
Down the
back.
street.
Yeah, exactly. Pan American Highway, they say it's just one road, you just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we should be back summer of 25, and last time, our first time going to Alaska is with a trailer, and then we always talked about going back to Alaska without a trailer.
Yeah.
So it'd be pretty hard to resist if we're
Yeah.
back, and our big life change is that in September or August of 25, our oldest will be headed to college if she doesn't take a gap year. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Wow.
So a lot of things can change on our end, but I would do Alaska for sure again, and then you should definitely do it. And obviously winter 25, I'm guessing back down to Baja, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a pretty natural, like you said, just get on the road and don't get off. So that's
Yeah.
where that would leave me, I think. And yeah, I actually had the privilege of going to Argentina and Chile in the Patagonian region this past year and absolutely fell in love with the landscape. But I did just fly down and bus everywhere. And so I think just the
Cool.
thought of being able to have my home and my dog down there with me along, all
Yeah.
of South America is just so exciting. And I want to make sure it's the right time, but I also feel, a year and a half from now, I feel like probably be ready. And I have definitely not seen everything that I want to see stateside. There's so much to do and so much to explore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I have kind of been feeling the itch of like, okay, like what's next? I've been on the road
Yeah.
now for over 2.5 years, and I have been thinking, what inspires me, what excites me, and Canada and Alaska first and foremost, and then from there, exploring more internationally as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Is it time for rapid
I
fire,
think
Dan?
we have a bit of a rapid fire.
Let
It's
me
not
just check the front door really quick.
it's not like a super, it doesn't have to be super fast paced rapid fire,
Okay.
but these are just kind of questions that we know that if you've done a couple of podcasts, you get asked the same questions a lot, so we try to like switch things up a little bit so it's not the same type of rapid fire questions that you might get, but on the other hand, it's not like a gotcha kind of thing. It's pretty straightforward.
Perfect.
So
Let's go.
we'll go with first one. Having been in a few different rigs, I know that obviously your latest is the one that you're currently in, but if you could choose any camper, any rig setup, money not being a factor, but you got to consider what happens after you get it. So it's not like you have unlimited cash. You have unlimited cash for this camper, and after that camper becomes yours, you're on your current income again. What
Yeah.
would that setup be?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that question is great. The stipulation is great, right? Because you could say, "Oh, I want
Right.
a dreamy VW, but it's going to break down constantly," and I
No,
do
you
not have
can't.
the
Right? You
cash.
can't afford the maintenance because the
Yeah.
money only comes in the purchase.
For sure. Yeah, I think honestly it would be pretty similar to this. I love the reliability of the Toyota, so money in that sense in the future being a factor, I think having something reliable is so important.
Yeah.
I also just love the truck camper platform. And so pretty similar to this, but I think in terms of a dream, brand non-specific, I think having something that does potentially pop up but lowers down and is more capable off-road would suit my lifestyle a little bit better. And then more
Yeah.
gear storage, I think, is the other part that I've really been looking for. The whole back of my truck, it's a double cab. It's built out with a platform and boxes, and my pack raft lives in bed with me, actually, which is pretty funny. But having something with more outdoor gear storage would be great. So maybe those, flatbeds with the outdoor storage on the sides
Yeah.
would be huge
Yeah.
for me in the future. And I could see myself maybe trending more in that direction, but probably sticking with a truck camper.
So I'm thinking a Tundra with a Hawk flatbed. But I think you need to give Dan Welty needs a phone call from
I
you.
didn't say it. Yeah, I mean those are the dream, right? It's a pretty BA. I don't know if you can swear. Pretty incredible platform. So
Yeah,
maybe one day. I think that'd be
definitely.
pretty cool.
Okay, cool.
Right?
I definitely concur. Okay, so we're probably a few years from when you may feel like you want to settle somewhere, but when that time comes, and we know that there is no perfect place.
No.
I mean, having seen places and been to places, we know that there's pluses and minuses of every place. So I'm not going to ask you what is your favorite, but I will make you pick 3 plots of land anywhere in the world, and what will you build on these 3 plots of land?
Oh man, 3 plots. This is fun. Thank you for giving me
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
the stipulation is that, once you've built it, when you're not there, we want to be able to go.
okay, got it. Perfect. I think the one that's been on my mind, and it seems like it's kind of a trend these days, but it makes sense why, is high desert in Colorado. If I'm going to build something, especially on
Okay.
my own, because I think the permitting and land regulations there are flexible enough to where you can get really creative and more DIY it, and that's very appealing to
Yeah.
me. Now that I have a little bit of experience,
You thinking on the western slope?
I would think, yeah, kind of that central strip or valley of Colorado. I'm thinking, Salida, Del Norte,
Oh,
outside
yeah.
of Paducah,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
southwestern
Buena
portion.
Vista, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely gets cold, but it's still fair weather enough and not so much snow that it's unmanageable if you wanted to be there in the winter. And I mean, summer in Colorado is just spectacular. So
Right.
I think that
That's
would
why
be
you
really
get 3. You don't have to be there all the time.
Yeah, no, this is good. This is good.
Okay.
I think for winter, and I'm a little biased. I grew up there and I've traveled a lot of places around the world, but Santa Cruz will always be home to me. And I think if I
Yeah.
could afford something in Santa Cruz, having kind of
Yeah.
that perfect combination of some mountains and the redwoods and also being that close to the ocean in a more temperate environment, I mean, that's the dream is
So
to
you would go
actually
back. You would go back to
there.
Santa Cruz if you
At
could.
least for part of the year, right? Because we get 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get 3. That's true.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
have to keep them. You can't sell them for cash after it's done.
No,
Okay.
I would stay there. I love Santa Cruz through and through.
Okay, so winter in Santa Cruz, summer
Yeah.
in Salida,
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really
in the shoulder
really
season.
beautiful-
Where do you go in the shoulder season?
I'm gonna go with Eastern Sierra, probably.
Oh,
Eastern
yeah,
Sierra.
yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good choice.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
a little
Where?
biased.
Tell me a city.
Which house
Yeah,
in
well-
Bodie State Park are
Yeah.
you going to buy?
Yeah,
Oh
the
my
one
gosh.
with all the glass in the window.
That could be pretty epic. But I actually, when I was little, under 3 years old, my parents lived in Mammoth Lakes, and so I think a part of me has always felt drawn back there into the Eastern Sierra. Having gone back and explored now, I think Mammoth itself has grown beyond its britches, especially in terms of just 90% of the residents feeling like they're just there seasonally. So I don't know that
Right,
I'd want to be
right.
in town specifically, but I think maybe slightly lower down, like outside of Bishop. Still, at the base of the Sierra, again, a little bit more fair weather, maybe not getting 10 to 15 feet of snow at once, but a couple feet at a time would be great.
Bishop is high up on our list. Bishop
Yeah.
Bishop has such a great, unexpected food scene. I mean, the
Bishop's awesome.
Bishop's awesome. I mean, for some reason, like Bishop's not high enough elevation anymore with the weather heating up, I guess, because it can get really
Yeah.
hot there. But
Yeah.
shoulder season,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's great. I've heard good things about Tom's place too. We'll keep this between us, but
Yeah,
in terms
yeah.
of being again that elevation sweet spot where you're not getting quite
Yeah.
as much
Yeah.
snow, but it's also not getting quite as hot. A little more.
I mean,
of a beat
Tom
path.
Place, you're practically in Mammoth at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, you are.
That's
but yeah,
cool.
that whole area.
I like it.
is
Okay, so the second part of that is what what would you build? What kind of structure would you build on these 3 plots?
Man. I go back and forth. I've thought about this a lot. That's why it's a hard question. I
We've all
Yeah.
thought about it. I feel like anybody who travels like have like constant daydreams about this kind of scenario, which is why
For
I love to
sure.
hear what everybody's answer is.
Yeah. You know, lately I will say I've made the jump from, and I think shipping container homes are very cool. And I think in terms
Hmm.
of cost, they're also a pretty effective way to stretch your dollar. So that part is attractive to me. And I think there's creative ways to stack them and turn them and make these really cool structures. But I've actually really been getting more into like the solar passive heating and cooling homes that have this
Hmm.
like big outdoor greenhouse slash like garage workshop. So they'll have a whole wall that's like a plexi or a corrugated plexi with all this natural light, and you can grill your food regardless of season, and a big workshop. And then a home that's made out of more of like a cinder block style or that cement home vibe that's not only structurally pretty sound but also again very off-grid friendly, self-sustaining with the heating and cooling. So I think
Nice.
ideally, if I can one day, I would love to build my own home like that and go in that direction.
Okay, so this third question is a little bit different, but you can be creative with this if you want. If the three of
Sounds
us were to
good.
start a business together, what would it be?
Oh man.
And you can be a silent partner if you want, or if you want us to be silent partners, we can be that too.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, I'm trying to think about your expertise. I mean, travel
I mean,
guides,
maybe assume we know
natural.
nothing.
You know nothing.
You just have to
Okay.
drag us along with your pursuits.
Okay. You know what I think you guys would have really great personalities for, and I mean, I'd love to know you better in person one day too, but just that easygoing, hip, chill, worldly vibe would be to have some really cool plot of land that maybe is host to a variety of different food truck types. Maybe there's some
Ooh,
camping
yeah.
nearby on site, but
Mm.
like a
Mm-hmm.
worldly food truck, beer, coffee, like
Oh, now
patio.
you're
Oh.
talking. Yes.
That could
Hmm.
be cool.
In Bishop. I think
Yeah,
this will be
it
in
would do
This is
Bishop.
well.
it.
It
Yeah.
would do well.
It would kill. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't want to be there all the time, but we have
Yeah,
to hire
we'll be
people.
high up
Yeah.
enough where we can, yeah, hire people to take care of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
rest.
Yeah.
Okay, I
All
like
right.
it.
I
I
like
like it.
this. Yeah.
Okay, so last one. Um, so going back maybe from the start of your travels and then your sort of endeavor for the last couple of years, who inspired you in your travels originally, and who inspires in your work, and who inspires you now in both of those areas?
Ooh, okay. Variety of answers here. I'll go back and to, early days, childhood. I said it actually just the other day, it's fresh in my mind, but my grandpa, my mom's dad, actually is a big inspiration for me. I thought he was the coolest dude, and I wish that he was around longer in my life. He passed when I was, I
Hmm.
think, 12 or 13. But I mean, signed his own papers to join the Marines when he was 16, and then went around and traveled the world. He was a motocross racer, he was an engraver, a watchmaker, just had he lived so many lives and never felt the need, it seemed, at least, in his storytelling, to be tied down to any one thing, but just really moved through life very fluidly and just very inspired. So, yeah, in hindsight, then I don't think I could appreciate it as much, unfortunately, because I was so young. But I think he was just an exceptional human, and he's the only person actually in my family too on either side that really ever traveled or explored much
Hmm.
outside of California. And so I think I definitely
Wow.
got some of that bug from him. I think in my work and travels now, I'm inspired by a variety of people. I think there's a couple of really big players in this space specifically that a lot of us look up to. Some in your circle, even. I know you're friends with, Bound for Nowhere and Tight Loops, and Chase and Amy and Mac and Owen, I think, are just incredible storytellers, and the way that they capture this lifestyle and their adventures is just spectacular. So I really look up to both of them. I think outside of maybe the travel videography and filmmaking realm, though, really inspired by some people that I'm grateful to call peers now. A friend of mine, Linnea, Linnea and Aquila is her channel on YouTube and platforms. She was the person who really I looked up to before I ever met her, when I was back living in my little pandemic apartment, thinking, oh gosh, like she's building a van all on her own. Maybe I can do that one day too. And now I'm grateful to, I've gotten to go backpacking with her and traveled with her a bit, and still to this day I'm just so inspired by her zest for life, her desire to be self-sustaining, and just her passion in everything that she does.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I mean, we feel like we got to know you pretty well in these last couple of hours, but we for sure would love to. Maybe next year when we're back, we'll do Alaska.
Yeah, that would be super fun, and then I'll get to hear about your lives more as well, and meet your kids. You all seem like incredible humans, and I'm sure they are as well.
Well, you just have to know that they're teenagers.
Stop.
Okay.
Maybe they're just teenagers. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm close enough.
Yeah, for
to
sure,
that
for sure. Maybe.
Still, where I can pretend to be cool. I can pretend to be, hipping with the times. They're probably not going to think I'm cool at all. In
That's
fact,
true. Well, no, we'll tell them you're 19, and you can just totally play along. Yeah.
I'll use
they
my
won't know the
dog as a
difference.
bargaining chip. Most
They'll
kids
use your
like
dog
dogs,
for sure.
So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on. Thanks for spending a couple hours with us. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great chatting.
Yeah, this was an incredible time. Thank you.
Have a fun rest of your time in Baja, and we'll chat again.
That sounds great. Thank you both so much for your time and for this great conversation. I hope you do make it to Alaska next year, and stay cool in Costa Rica.
So there you go. That was our interview with Alexandria from She Roams Wild.
And that was actually our first interview with somebody we've never met before.
Yeah, not in person. So when we talked to her on camera, it was the first time we've had sort of a face-to-face conversation. All the other people that we've interviewed, we've met in real life. Mm-hmm. So we hope to meet Alexandra in real life one day. Maybe next year when we get back to the US, she'll still be on the road and we'll get to talk to her. So if you guys watch her videos on YouTube, she does a really good job of portraying her day-to-day nomadic life with her dog. Mm-hmm. So we had a really good time talking to her, and she's now back in the Western US. I think her last video has her in Nevada. So go give her a follow if you don't follow her already, and check out her videos on YouTube. I think she gives a really good perspective of what it's like for a young solo female to be traveling alone. All right, so that's it. That's our episode 23 of the Freely Roaming Podcast with Dan and Marlene. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to go to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. We really appreciate that. And if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a comment down below and a thumbs up. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening.
And I'll see you guys in the next episode.